Sometimes the biggest battles in a marriage don't begin with shouting, they begin with silence. In this home, one visitor never knocks and every visit brings criticism. A husband trapped between love and the voice that raised him.
You think you can just walk in here and change everything?
I only want peace.
Your pride started this war!
And sometimes the strongest woman is the one who chooses wisdom instead of revenge.
Lagos, Nigeria. The apartment is modern, clean, carefully decorated with neutral colors and framed family photos. A place Amora worked hard to build with her husband, Chinedu. Their marriage was only 2 years old. But lately, peace had become a rare visitor. Mrs. Ezin walks into the kitchen wearing a bright wrapper and headscarf, inspecting everything like a military officer reviewing a barracks. She opens the pot on the stove. She shakes her head dramatically. Chinedu likes his soup thicker than this. Amora exhales slowly, trying to remain calm. I made it the way he asked yesterday. Mrs. Ezin laughs softly. My son has been eating my cooking for 30 years. You think you know him better than me? The words land like small stones thrown repeatedly at glass. Crack. 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 Amora stirs her tea slowly, gathering patience like someone stacking fragile plates. Inside her mind, thoughts swirl. Why does she keep coming here? Why does she treat me like a guest in my own home? Footsteps approach. Chinedu enters the room, adjusting the sleeves of his office shirt. He senses the tension immediately. His eyes move from his mother to his wife. Good morning, he says cautiously. Mrs. Ezin turns toward him instantly, her expression softening. My son. She hugs him tightly. You look tired. Are you eating well in this house? Chinedu forces a small smile. Mama, I'm fine. But Amora notices the way he avoids eye contact with her. And that hurts more than the criticism. Because silence is sometimes the loudest betrayal. The visits became more frequent. At first it was once a week. Then twice. Soon Mrs. Ezin had her own spare key. She arrived unannounced. Morning. Afternoon. Even late evenings. Every visit came with inspection. Criticism. Correction. You sweep the floor wrongly. You spend too much money. You are not respectful enough. You are not ready to be a wife. And worst of all, no child yet. That one always came wrapped in a sigh. A quiet accusation disguised as concern. Amora swallowed each comment like bitter medicine. But bitterness has a way of accumulating. One evening the tension finally cracked. Rain poured outside the apartment windows. Chinedu sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. Mrs. Ezin stood in the living room, arms folded. I spoke to the pastor today, she announced. Chinedu looked up. About what? About this marriage. Amora's heart skipped. Mrs. Ezin turned slowly toward her. There are prayers that remove spiritual blockages. The implication hung in the air. Amora stood up slowly. Mama, what exactly are you saying? Mrs. Ezin tilted her head. I am saying sometimes wives bring problems into a man's destiny. The word sliced through the room. Chinedu rubbed his forehead. Mama, please. But his protest sounded weak. Too weak. Amora's chest tightened. Inside her mind, something shifted. For 2 years she had stayed quiet. Respectful. Patient. But respect should not require humiliation. The following Sunday morning, Amora woke early. She prepared breakfast carefully. Fried plantain, scrambled eggs, fresh tea. When Mrs. Ezin entered the kitchen, she immediately began her usual inspection. She lifted a spoon, tasted the eggs, shook her head. Too much salt. Amora smiled politely. Mama, please sit. Mrs. Ezin narrowed her eyes suspiciously but sat down. Amora placed a plate before her. Mama, she said gently, I want to learn from you today. The older woman straightened slightly. Of course. You should. I want you to teach me how to cook the soup Chinedu likes best. Mrs. Ezin smirked. Finally you are ready to learn. All morning they cooked together. But something unusual happened. For the first time, Amora asked questions. Real questions. Mama, how did you handle marriage when you were young? Mrs. Ezin paused slightly. No woman advised me. I learned the hard way. Was it difficult living with your own mother-in-law? The older woman scoffed. She was worse than me. Amora nodded thoughtfully. Did it hurt? The question landed softly, but deeply. Mrs. Ezin looked at her for a moment. And for the first time, the armor around her pride cracked. Yes, she admitted quietly. It did. Amora stirred the soup slowly. Mama, I don't want us to repeat that pain. Silence filled the kitchen. Mrs. Ezin studied the young woman carefully. Perhaps expecting anger, defiance, but finding none. Only calm honesty. Later that evening, Chinedu returned home. He found his mother and wife sitting together on the couch, laughing. He froze at the door, confused. What happened here? He asked cautiously. Amora smiled. Mama taught me how to cook your favorite soup. Mrs. Ezin cleared her throat. Yes, she learns quickly. Chinedu blinked. Because something had changed. Not dramatically, but subtly. Like the shift in air before a storm passes. The visits became less frequent. Not because Amora fought, but because she understood something important. Control often hides insecurity. Mrs. Ezin had spent years protecting her son. She feared losing relevance, losing influence, losing the position she once held. But Amora didn't treat her like an enemy. She treated her like family. Even when it was difficult. Even when it was unfair. And slowly, the wall softened. Months later, during a family dinner, Mrs. Ezin stood up unexpectedly. She raised a glass of juice. I want to say something. Everyone fell silent. She turned toward Amora. This young woman has more patience than I had at her age. Amora looked surprised. Mrs. Ezin continued. I came into this house too often. I interfered too much. Chinedu's eyes widened. But she never disrespected me. She paused. And because of that, I respect her. The room filled with quiet warmth. Not dramatic applause. Just understanding. Later that night, as Amora and Chinedu sat on their balcony watching Lagos lights flicker across the skyline, he took her hand. I'm sorry I didn't defend you enough. She squeezed his hand gently. You're defending us now. He smiled. And for the first time in a long while, the apartment felt peaceful again. Because sometimes the strongest victory is not winning a fight. It's choosing wisdom over pride. And sometimes the person you thought was your greatest enemy was simply waiting for someone brave enough to break the cycle. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more storytelling content.